This session is to cover management contracts and particularly the relationship between owners and operators. And to assist me with the session, I've got four very experienced people in the marketplace from both an operator and owner and lawyers representing owners and operators with a focus. On my immediate left is Scott Antel, Senior Partner at DLA Piper. Barry Hashemi, Principal at Azure Property Group in London. Aaron Libinson, Vice President of Development for Russia and CIS for IHG, based in Moscow. And then Matt Polman, Partner at Goodwin Procter in London. What I thought I'd do is just give each of them a little moment to describe their experience and introduce themselves, and then we'll have a discussion which will be focused on a hypothetical hotel, 200 rooms, probably somewhere in the order of about 10 years old, 4 or 5 star internationally branded hotel with a 25-year management agreement on it. And the topic will be basically to just describe the various elements of that management contract from an owner and operator's perspective. Scott, if I could just let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Scott Antel. I'm a partner in the Moscow office of DLA Piper. I've been working in the Russia CIS market for some 20 years now, so I've gone pretty much native. I do most of my work, 95% of my work is hotel-related, development, purchase, sale, management contracts, franchise, and then operational matters. I've worked with all of these fellows here on various other projects, and also do work in Turkey.
Morning, my name is Hashemi. I have started my career in the hotel 35 years ago, and for the last 10 years, I'm running my private companies, which we invest in hotel properties. We do sometimes manage the hotels ourselves, and sometimes we just lease it out to the operating company.
Hello, I'm Aaron Libinson. I'm Vice President of Development for Russia and CIS. Joined IHG 3 years ago. Before then, I was working on the other side. I was working for the owners, and I was working for Moscow government, overseeing their hotel assets. So pretty much knowing both sides of the story.
Matt Polman, Goodwin Procter in London. I've been based in London since 2007. Our team is deeply involved with buying, selling, financing, managing hotels and resorts around the world. In the last year, our team has worked on management, hotel and residential deals in Tunisia, Abu Dhabi, Kazakhstan, Dubai, Italy, Germany. So good geographical reach to the practice.
Great, thank you very much. To set the ball rolling, I thought I'd give each of the participants an opportunity to describe their ideal management agreement, which will probably precipitate some conversations. If I could start with Aaron, from your perspective as the operator, it's obviously an agreement which you're very involved with. Maybe you could just give an idea of what you'd like out of a management agreement and some of the elements of it which you're looking for when you sign a management agreement.
I mean, we can discuss various things, you know, what the management agreement, ideal management agreement should be like, and it's never a one-sided story. So we could look at a base, a set of metrics that the operator would be interested to propose and maintain in the agreement: the non-interference, the unsubordinated incentive fees, the length of the contract, the liquidated damages on termination. But it's, in fact, life is complex. So is the relationship between an owner and operator. So in real life, a management agreement should be based on trust. And this trust comes with a trust to the brand and the ability of the operator to deliver the value throughout the life of the contract to the owner. And this is what we can look at as the our view of an ideal management agreement. So without speaking of the particular attributes of it or numbers, it has to be based on trust and mutual understanding that this is a 20-year or 25 years contract, and the operator has to deliver throughout this term. And if the owner understands that and trusts us, for me, it's an ideal agreement.
Okay. Barry, would you give a comment with regard to your own, what you're looking for from a management agreement?
I don't know exactly what I am looking, but what I compare management agreements with the marriage, or I compare the management agreement exactly as you said, a trust. In the relation of trust, you do not need agreement, you just trust each other. But what I have a problem today with the management contract is simply at the time that you sign a management contract, perfectly you are happy to enter to that relationship. There's no question about that, otherwise you would have not signed that agreement. The question is the time. The world is changing, the environment is changing. So imagine you would have signed 30 years ago that you would have bought all your mobile phone from Philips, who was the first producer of large telephone mobile phone. Where would you stand today? Philips is still a standing company, solid company, but they are not the perfect company for mobile phone anymore. Or imagine you would have signed with IBM for all the software 30 years ago. And the IBM today still is a solid company, but they are not necessarily providing software for your hotels or whatever it is. So if the last 30 years, the changes has been so dramatic in every other industry, either we are living in an industry which we are not opening ourselves for changes, so the industry will have problems, or we are in an industry which we also want changes, and changes will make a new environment. So I have a problem to see these contracts which are signed today, which are valid for 25, 30, so forth. And then when you have these circumstances and the environment change, people start to pick on each other. They look for the loopholes. They look for the excuses because they're no longer happy to be together for whatever reason, without saying and blaming anybody. The owner does not invest in his property, the quality of the brand deteriorates, and then on the other side, the operator will not let it go because it has got a cash flow. And lastly, the way it is today, if you have a hotel where the value is 100, theoretically worth 100, whatever currency that is, if you sign a management contract valid for 30 years, the day you sign that contract, your value of your asset drop by 6 million, 7 million, 8 million. And by the same amount, almost the value in the management company goes up. Yet there has not been any work done. There is no work has been done. So this commitment of one side to the other side deteriorate the value in one side and increase the value in the other side. And Rob, you are in the agency business. You know every time you announce a hotel for sale, if this hotel could be rebranded, this is one of the advantages of this particular hotel, which makes the value to grow. I wonder
certainly on occasion. Let me see whether or not Matt or Aaron would like to respond to that as a sort of operator-friendly lawyer and an operator.
Yeah, so much of this is context specific, and the term discussion is always a lively one and interesting, but just to contrast what we've heard about, 25, 30, maybe 40-year contract. A few months ago we were sitting in some pretty serious negotiations on a management contract in an emerging market with a very sophisticated owner, owns a number of hotels, many brands, both city center and resort. And in the context of that negotiation, they asked, in fact, if the operator would mind extending the term to 100 years. The thinking being the association with the brand that this particular owner had seen the full force and benefit of over decades. Their view was securing that relationship for that extended term would largely benefit not only the development phase of this rather complex project, but the operational, long-term operations of it. So it's very contextual. That's an example. It's not necessarily definitional, but I think it's important to show that there's differing views on this.
Balance.
So if I could also say, Rob, just a few things about the ideal management contract and just some themes that I think are important and I see often, particularly if we're talking about 4- or 5-star upper upscale luxury. It really is a commitment by the owner to the brand and a management agreement structure at the outset. Having appropriate levels of day-to-day discretion for the benefit of both the owner and the operator. As we've seen the industry move to a more asset-light model, seeing the value of hotel companies increasingly in the management agreements, having a view that that is in fact, a long-term contract, so security of tenure is going to be important as you wade into the management agreement. Some of the themes.
Scott, what's your findings with regard? I mean, we're focusing very much on length of agreement at the moment. What are the aspects?
I'm working for the owner today. Barry mentioned comparing it to a marriage. I've often thought of doing that, and then I realized that I think 50% of marriages end up in divorce, so maybe it's not the best comparison. But I guess what I'd agree with Barry that this idea that the world's going to stay the same. You sign a 20-year management or 30-year management. Why is that? Well, the operator says we have to have 20 years so we can book it for the stock market. Well, that's not very considerate of our asset that we built. Also, you're asking us to enter into something for this long term, assuming the world doesn't change. You want us as owner to remain static, but you want to change. I mean, just last week we had an operator drop a brand as well as add 2 new brands. Now, if that operator is my operator in my community, what does that do for me as an owner? Probably going to dilute it. We've had huge changes in the distribution system, that it used to be through bookings online, telephone. Today with the online travel agencies, the value that the system brings is weakening. So why should we stay static over 20 years? Keeping in mind that we took the investment risk, we built the property, and that we want to determine what we do with that property, who we sell it to, when we want to sell without restrictions, and the like. I also think that often, certainly in the areas I work, the local owners, as opposed to some of the operators, know the local environment a lot better. They know contractors better, they know the local bureaucracy better, and can add a lot of value. And if an operator has a significant long-term base, they may learn that, but there's a lot that can be learned, and an owner can provide a lot of benefit, and they should be allowed to do that, and that should not be construed as interference.
Aaron,
I was just going to add something from a different angle. Look, you started well when you said, it's like a marriage contract, but when we discuss a marriage, we never think, this person's going to change, and how long should this marriage last? Probably the example of marriages that end up in divorce is a bad one.
I think you got the wrong end of the marriage. I was meant in the marriage in the sense of Catholic marriage, that you cannot separate.
But the thing is, why marriages end up in divorce? Because people stop growing together, the interests go away from each other. So the thing is, happy contracts, and it's exactly the one that Matt has mentioned, They stay for as long as it takes, and it can be 30 years, 40 years, and we have an example of one of our properties recently sold with a long contract and a few renewals, just because they trust the brand. And exactly as the marriage, it depends on the relationships during the marriage that could be peaks and troughs, and the way that it's managed within the relationship. It either keeps it going or ends up in divorce. So this is why it's very much like the marriage, and you know, this is the relationship have to sustain during this time. So based on trust and understanding that the brands are evolving, the owners are evolving, the markets are evolving, and if that happens together, this is a happy contract, and that sustains 20, 25 years.
Why
and if I could just pick up a bit on what Aaron's saying about the evolution, and we're hearing it a lot over yesterday and in today, the big brands, if you will, these are not static organizations, and they are focusing on innovation and remaining relevant in a razor-sharp competitive sector. And that speed of innovation, as we're hearing, is increasing because they owe it to their owner and to the expansion of their system to continue to evolve and innovate.
But they're not considering the owners, when they make these decisions, they're not always considering the owner's interests.
No.
Yes, upgrades to brand standards, flat screen TVs, internet, yes. But if I decide, let's put up a new brand, create a new brand, and I set that up next door to my hotel, that's dilution.
But what other businesses, give me one more example of what other businesses that we make such a long-term contract. In fact, do you know, in fact, under certain country commercial code, you are not even legally, you cannot enter to such a long-term contract because the board of directors of the company cannot abdicate and give the power of their business for 30 years to somebody else. This is, in certain countries, this is not even accepted. This is a fact. Tell me what other businesses that we can, do you appoint a managing director for a company for 30 years?
Maybe we should look at the reasons behind. Aaron, maybe you could explain the desire to have such a lengthy term.
There are two things here, two sides of it. There is a brand, which is a franchise, and the management. And we're looking at the operator managing the branded hotel for the owner. So what are you having issues with the brand or with an operator having a long-term contract?
Any commitment, I have an issue. I'm not having a problem necessarily. I'm just saying that it is a very uncomfortable when you want to enter to this contract to predict for 30 years that this brand or that brand will grow this way or that way. It is one day Accor would like to have leases. One day they want to have ownership. One day they want to go light of this and heavy on that one. How should I place my life when I don't know? The new CEO of Accor just said he changed what they decided 8 months ago. I was in the pure negotiation of converting a lease contract with Accor to a management contract type because that was the flavor of the year ago. Spending 3 months of discussion, the new CEO come, the policy changed. So how can anybody commit for such a long period in any business? I'm not talking about hotel business. I'm just talking about any business, any relationship.
I think there's some other, just touching upon term and renewal options, and there's other areas of control over ownership, which I think we could also just ask some question about. And maybe Scott, you could start with this. But non-disturbance agreements, controls on the level of debt for the owner, non-sale to a competitor, preemption rights. These are all things which also sort of fetter the title. What's your view on the necessity for those, and any comment that you might have on the willingness?
If listening with what Barry said, that signing the management contract actually reduces the value, that in legal terms, is an encumbrance on the property, and how after that you could ask for an NDA from a bank, I'm hard-pressed. I mean, obviously, you need some length of term. The brand has to get the property up and running, invest a lot of money in doing that, and once it gets going, oh, thank you, goodbye now. Well, that's not right. You need to let them reap their rewards. But you know, again, you go back to, it's my asset. We built it. We invested in it. Things change. My investment horizons and what I wish to do change. And yes, we should have the freedom to do what we want with that property, and recognizing that if we do ask you to leave, there ought to be, you know, recognize your investment in that property, what you've done, and some compensation. But
yeah, but I mean, you pointed to the right direction. I mean, you invested into the property, we invest into our brands, and you can. Well, it's a branded property, right? So you just don't build a brick and mortar structure. It's a hotel, and this is a branded hotel. We're not talking about just a hotel. It's a branded hotel. So the brand delivers value as much as the investment in brick and mortar does.
But maybe.
And otherwise, it wouldn't have been a business of branded hotels.
Every time I come to these conferences, all I hear, the most frequently used word is brand, brand, brand.
Yeah.
No, but
you don't manage hotels, you manage brands.
No,
don't
but
you?
can I
And I want you to manage my hotel, and I want you to say it. But you don't just say it on the contract. You say, we will supervise, direct, and control, that we will advise and consult. And then another paragraph says, we want quiet enjoyment and complete non-interference.
Yeah.
Fine, I want you to run the hotel. So put on the first page, we will manage your hotel, not supervise, direct, and control. That's consulting.
We have that in our agreement. No, hold on. We have that in our agreements, and we do manage the hotel as an agent for the owner, and this is a branded hotel with our brand attached to it, and we know how to manage a branded business that has to make money for the owner and for ourselves. And don't forget, each hotel, part of the branded system, does exactly the same for the system as the system does for the hotel. So the system exists to promote those hotels with the brand name on them, and these hotels promote the system, vice versa. So what is
does your frequent guest program really benefit a hotel in Samara, Russia? Yes, I have to pay for the fees. Nobody takes their wife for a long weekend in Samara, Russia. So I don't get any upside of that.
Not in the summer. In the summer, we have quite a good weekend business in Samara in the summer.
You will be divorced.
Scott, couple things around the investment. I don't think anybody could say with a straight face that the operator's quantum of investment matches or even comes close to what a developer is doing on a new build. No question. But there is investment being made by both parties in the context of developing and operating under a long-term management agreement.
No, but please.
Just finish the thought. So the idea that it's sort of way off sides to ask for an NDA in the context of a long-term management agreement, part of that discussion includes, yes, there's a non-disturbance piece, but what also is core to that agreement is the attorney provisions that lenders like to receive, particularly as you look back at the last 5 years with all the distress. The lender's assurance that in a default scenario where the owner is becoming insolvent and unable to service the debt, they have a commitment from a recognized, in many cases, international or global operator to maintain the hotel in accordance with that management agreement, provides meaningful comfort to that lender and typically allows for a difficult but constructive discussion on getting to a suitable NDA.
But that doesn't, I have not seen a contract which doesn't give the operator the right to terminate. It is the other way around, that the operator can stay. This has nothing to do with that scenario that the bankers wants them to stay or not. This is something to do totally with a different issue. It is an issue that you say, first of all, that there are three different types of hotel. Are you talking about existing hotel or development hotel? A developing hotel. If it is a developing, they have a technical assistant fee. If they want to increase that technical assistant fee and they think they should be higher, they should charge it up front. They should not get the person under imprisonment for 30 years contract because they didn't charge enough on the technical assistant fee 30 years ago. This is nothing to do with one another. If you gave me the service, you charge me, I pay for it. But don't let me sign and get me stuck. If a management company creates value, are we saying the owners are idiots that they cancel a valuable contract? Are we really saying that? I don't think we are talking about that either. So the perfect relation is a relationship that you work together and you are not stuck by a contract.
And I think
that's a perfect relation. You provide services, and I need those services, and I pay for it, those services. But this contract relation, it's end up with the situation today that none of the old brand, whether it's a Holiday Inn, whether it's a Marriott, whether it's a Hilton, or any other brand, any of them you want, there is no consistency in the product because the contract is old, owner is not renovating the hotel, and management contract is not terminated because they get a fee out of it, etc., and they live with this relationship. Tell me, I don't know, I can only give example of London. What's the similarity between the Hilton Hotel in Park Lane and Hilton Hotel in Kensington? There's no similarity between these products. They cannot force the guy in the Kensington to invest because he will not invest. He says, if you don't like it, terminate it. He doesn't terminate. How many hotels the management company has terminated?
We have terminated a few when we did a cleanup in 2009, 2010.
You managed to do 1,500 hotels in 1 year.
Exactly.
What kind of a cleanup can that be? You put just a green behind the reception and you call it a new brand?
So,
what you do is usually in those cases.
No, I have few Holiday Inn, so
you go from management to franchise in those cases.
So, Rob, in our hypothetical 4 or 5-star Western Europe, we're under a 25-year management agreement. I would have thought, now that we're 10 years into this contract, if you rolled back 10 years ago, and we were all sitting around this table negotiating that contract, the performance test would have been something that we focused on significantly, which gives a couple things. The operator signing up to drive a certain order of performance to your hotel, the failure to do that over some period of time would give the owner the right to exit the relationship. I would also think that 4 or 5 Western Europe capital, there would be a meaningful discussion around a termination on sale provision. That's going to be a very difficult negotiation depending on exactly how far up the 5-star chain we're going or how far down to 4 and below we're going. But again, while we talk about putting these people together for long term, it's intended to be that with some caveats to address concern around operational performance.
In my previous work, I used to work for one of the chain in the other side of the table. I've signed about 200 management contracts on behalf of the operator. And they all have performance clause. And yet none of the one, at least I have signed, anybody has been able to show the operator not perform. Show me how many contracts the owner have proven and managed to effectively use the performance clause.
Maybe that
it is an impossible.
Maybe that would be a good topic just to talk about now. How might you be able to arrange a performance clause that works? And Scott, maybe you could just.
I'd agree. Frankly, I view performance tests as sort of a macho attribute of the lawyer. He has to do it and put that in there. It's that he's done his job, but I've never heard of one enforced, and the terms that the operators give are generally either pretty easily obtained or the difficulty in proving and getting the data today, particularly with some of the monopoly concerns about sharing data. So it's difficult.
Aaron, have you found one that's been come close to being
I got
operated on?
one is one of our clients, they don't do it with the data that it's very subjective. You roll your dice. You go and say, I think you haven't performed, and then you hire an outside expert. He comes in and says, I look at this property vis-a-vis comparable properties, and you performed or not. But that's no numbers. It's just taking your chances.
Exactly. I mean, you know, the standard performance test looks at two sides of the story. One is the performance of that particular hotel, and one is the relative performance against the competition. So if you set up your competition set properly, and if you are in a normal budget relationships with the owner, so in fact, I mean, it's very easy to look at the performance test as a clean and clear metric to assess the relative performance of the operator towards the budget and towards the market. Unfortunately, the markets are different, and the comp sets are sometimes difficult to establish, and there are other ways of establishing if this hotel performs or not. But I mean, in real terms, performance for you is what? If it's delivering on the expectations on the budget, and on your knowledge of what the market is doing. So you are an informant owner, right? You know what the market is doing, and you can judge for yourself whether this hotel performs or not.
And if the budget not agree?
Well, this is a great point. This is one of the core elements of this owner-operator relationship is the annual budget process, and that feeds directly into the performance test.
Yeah, but the budget does not agree. The operator comes with a budget, the owner doesn't agree, and they have a normal standard clause. It says if the budget is not agreed, they use the previous year budget, and they go on and on with it. You know that one. I mean, either we are open in here. You know the management contract, and I think we all know the management, and I think the audience knows the management contract. So the truth of the matter is that if you are performing, if you are doing a good job, why would an owner put down the name down and spend some more money and put another name up? Either he is a maniac or he is a cuckoo, and you don't want to have a relationship with such a man. In any case, let him go, if it is the case. So it is not really the case. It is what you said right from beginning. When you sign, the value of the management company is based on the value of this contract. And the value of the contract is made up of lengths versus a fee. And this will give a value. So every time they sign this contract, it keeps adding to the value. And of course, if it's a shorter term contract, the values are much less. Unless you are so good that the market value you that nobody will terminate, even if they have the right to terminate.
The other part to that, to fold in too, is the commitment that the operator often makes to, particularly if we're talking about a Western European capital, to some semblance of a radius restriction and the opportunities that they forego, not only during the development cycle, but for many years thereafter. Other opportunities that may have arisen that they could have sought after, but they made a commitment to this owner. Some of that opportunity cost should appropriately be amortized over a long period of time.
But what does that help? When the guy comes and announces, he says, Radisson blue, and now Radisson red, and Radisson green, and then it comes Accor, Ibis, and this and this and that, and then when they run out of, and they created name, even which one cannot pronounce them.
and they're never in the radius test. Only blue is in radius test.
What is that protection? What does that protection give? This doesn't give you a protection, really. I mean, it used to be one brand, there was a one Hilton, and now there are, you turn around, there is a DoubleTree and TripleTree and Hampton, and then the Garden Inn, and then they run out of all the flowers, and they come with the numbers and the colors, and they keep on adding with this.
Maybe just take your original name and do it well.
If we turn it over to Aaron to describe the portfolio of brands under the IHG umbrella, you could give us chapter and verse on how each one is distinct and unique, but probably don't want to.
No, I mean, that's exactly. I mean, thank you very much for not referring to us. And we're doing a good job on not falling into the same trap. And we know that strong brands win for you, first of all, and for us. So, I mean, yeah. But You're right, and you're right that the brand value can be diluted when a kind of sister brand emerges, and there could be potential dilution of your business. But any area of protection or impact that the business, the new hotel can make onto the existing business, has to be valued from a different perspective. Look, for example, is there enough business for that hotel, or there is an incremental business that emerges or develops when a new hotel is there? So, I mean, each impact or each new entry to the market has to be analyzed and assessed from the point of view how much synergies it could create to your hotel, or conversely, how much dilution to your business it could make. So that's a discussion that we have with our owners. We have the impact procedure, and if something happens and somebody wants to open a hotel with a similar brand close to yours, we will need to see how much impact that has onto the existing business. We wouldn't want our brand value to be diluted the same way as your cash flow.
Maybe one of the things that we could look at is owners' input into the operational side, and I know that's something where if you're going to have a strong marriage, you need input from both sides. But in some of the management agreements, that's restricted. Maintenance of the building by the owner is obviously one area where an operator is very keen to sort of make sure that the property keeps being maintained. What are the panel's thoughts with regard to FF&E reserve, how that money's spent, what control the owner ought to have on that, and where the money should be spent, and who's actually spending it? Maybe that's Scott, if I could start with you.
Who I would call my mentor in this business, and he actively sought the owner's involvement in the hotel. He insisted that the owner meet him every month and sit down, and this was during years when things were booming. Everything was going well, and he said, "You're going to sit down with me." He spoke 2 words of Russian, the owner spoke 3 words of English. They went through it, and he told them the good and the bad, and he communicated, and by doing that, this owner actually gave him the general directorship of the company, which is unheard of in a Russian property. And he was free to do whatever he wanted and spend whatever he wanted because he communicated on a regular basis, and there were never any surprises. And he actively sought their purchasing skills. He actively sought their knowledge on local tax and accounting things, which they knew the streets a lot better than some Western operator did. And it worked very well. But also we have some owners that are nightmares. As well. So it really, I found it was just communication.
Yeah, Scott, I couldn't agree more around creating an environment through the contract or otherwise. It is about a relationship, and one that should have healthy dialogue going back and forth. When it comes to issues like FF&E or reserves, capital reserves, working capital, operations, one of the things that I've found interesting over the last years is increasing pool of hotel owners who are not necessarily hoteliers as we come to know them. They might be new to the sector, but they might bring to this project purchasing expertise born out of retail. They might bring F&B experience born out of having operated restaurants all over the world. But often these owners derive and offer a certain degree of expertise, frankly, that the operators can benefit from. So identifying those, call it touch points or inroads where the owner can truly drive value to the hotel. It would be a very unfortunate situation if the operator wasn't taking that experience on board and finding a way to collaborate with the owner on those issues.
There are some very good examples of that come to mind. Hilton's relationship with Mrs. Batir on the Hilton in Paddington is a very good example of that, where it's almost a manchise, where it's a management agreement, but she has a lot of input into the operations. Barry, what's your experience of sort of owner input into the operations of the business? Staff is another area where you may wish to comment with regard to general manager appointment and that sort of thing.
I think that goes a lot between, I think that's a personal relation, and I don't think it is so much defined in the contract really, and I think it's very difficult to define it in the contract. But I think one of the areas which is continuously as a problematic is this FF&E and capital reserve. Because what will happen, what is happening is that that operator normally produces a projection and shows this projection for the next 30 years. And then it shows in that projection X% as FF&E reserve. And then it tells the owner, this is the money that it's left for you. Then later on, he comes and says, oh, but now if you want to repair the roof, this is not part of FF&E. This is part of capital expenditure. And the owner looks to his left and to the right, and where is that money supposed to come? I thought it all comes out of this business itself. Oh, no, no, that comes from your other angle, which has never been communicated to that poor man who was the owner at the time. Neither, by the way, none of the consultants even do that one. None of the, consultants who produce this projection in top of the, when they want to develop a hotel, they would typically show me one development of the hotel which shows anything more than FF&E reserve. So where is the rest of it, which is called capital expenditure? From which source should that come? Nobody knows yet. I mean,
Aaron.
You take the examples. I mean, we could always look at the real life. I mean, again, speaking of the marriage, the initial discussions, the dating, somebody doesn't disclose the fact that he's a latent alcoholic, and finally, it goes wrong, and it ends up in divorce. Exactly. When we said initially, when we initially said that everything should be based on trust, that trust comes with the initial discussions and the complete disclosure of all the aspects of the relationships. And when we say, okay, roof is not part of the FF&E because it's governed by the USALE, the reduction 10, and we all know what is FF&E and what is the structure of the building and the capital expenditure. It wasn't properly communicated to the poor owner. Either he didn't want to listen or he misunderstood something, but if it's completely open, it shouldn't be as a point of concern later on. And the FF&E reserve and the FF&E budget is one thing, and the capital expenditure is another thing. So again,
my question was is it been done? Is it been done? Has it been communicated?
Well, that's part of your sales pitch. That's the problem.
It is. I mean,
your predecessor was outstanding at that. And I'm not you're doing very well as well. But no, he was outstanding at explaining what an operator brought to it. And he didn't, without mentioning the word brand.
And this is why I don't have trouble with the hotels that
and other things. And the one thing that really annoys people is these central services charges. It's a bit like going to a doctor in America. You get a bill for this, a bill for that, a bill from the doorman, a bill from the cleaning lady. They just keep coming. And you can't quantify it. And why can't you, when we're sitting down at a table, say, how much is this going to cost? You must have rough numbers. Come on.
Yeah, we do.
Then tell the owner. It's an investment decision.
But again, that's operational matters, and we don't know how much training this staff would need, or we don't know how much risk management is going to be. Look at what's happening in Ukraine now. And then the risk managers' bills will come later on. Who do we have to blame? The owner or the government?
We want a rough budget estimation. We're not asking for a guarantee there. And I understand you don't want to guarantee, and you shouldn't, because things happen.
Absolutely, transparency, timely transparency, I'll say, is critical. No one likes to be surprised, whether it's a 10 euro invoice or a 100,000 euro invoice. And there should be, in a properly functioning relationship, a framework that allows for that information to flow, so you're getting input well ahead of when there's a capital call for a major repositioning of the hotel.
My question is that there are lots of owners or owners' representatives in here. How many of you have been told at the time when you went to the construction of hotel, in addition to FF&E, there is other costs that we estimate, because you are the expert, this man doesn't know, it's going to be so much. I haven't experienced, and certainly I didn't do it in my other job when I said I've signed 200 of this contract. I never told anybody about the capital expenditure. Never. I told about FF&E, and everybody was happy with it, and they said the rest of it is a cash in my pocket. I didn't say, by the way, that's not quite the case. Some of it you have to leave behind again. Are you telling?
Yeah,
about
I'm
this
telling
capital expenditure?
Yeah, because I mean the property can go. I mean the property is dating. I mean all the systems can go. They have their life cycle. They're not part of the FF&E. If it's a 20-year property, you would need to look at the chillers, you would need to look at the MAP systems, you would need to look at the water treatment plant or other things. And this is clearly part of the capital expenditure.
I do understand that, but I'm just saying on that cash flow that you are producing, on that result that you are producing and you projected for the owner, did you say or did you highlight there is allocation of X amount also for these things? Nobody does it. Nobody do it.
I think that's one of the probably one of the areas where new investors coming into the market are often suffer in the hotel space and then run away from it afterwards. I don't think the hotel industry generally looks after the new entrants into the space. I just thought we might, we've got about 15 minutes to go. I've got a question up my sleeve in case there are none from the floor, but it'd be quite nice to hear if there's any questions from the floor that they might like to ask the panelists. Good, excellent. Heike.
Here's a microphone.
Do you want, have we got a mic actually?
Heike, we own a core properties, and I have to say it's very interesting. There's two thoughts going through my mind. One of them is I don't think anybody ties the owner's hands. They willingly go into these contracts. I think we need to remind ourselves of this. And I also think that the legal profession that advises us has a far greater role to play to guide us through the purchases and through these agreements. And even if a new kid on the block, if you will, enters the market and talks to a brand, whoever they may be, I think there's enough expertise in the legal profession and capacity to help us through seeing these shortfalls that you just highlighted.
Why? Okay. Did everybody hear the question? More interested at the back. So I think it was basically that the industry should protect, particularly the legal profession should protect new owners coming in. Is that right, Heike?
Absolutely.
Okay, maybe I could, Matt.
I completely agree. In my experience, the best framework for owners and operators is very collaborative in nature, and it is a long-term commitment that both parties make to one another. Are there difficult issues? Absolutely. And there's a lot of potential friction, but at the end of the day, you're trying to structure a relationship where both parties are aligned to drive performance and ultimately profitability to both the owner and the operator. Getting to that point is complex and difficult, but eminently achievable.
And Scott?
I'd agree, and I think getting good advice on both sides. I mean, I have a number of operators who were more than happy for me to go work for the owner, and you will teach the guy the business and focus on the key points, and we'll get the contract signed, and we'll get it done, and we'll get it done quickly, because if you give it too often, the owners are big companies. They have in-house legal counsel from a construction company, an oil firm, and they look at a hotel management as a goods and services contract. And if you read it from that structure, where you're handing over power of attorney, ability to spend all the money, etc., it comes back completely red. So yeah, getting people in and getting the operators in early. You know, I think the most, certainly in my market, the most beneficial thing the operator brings is that technical service sphere, building the hotel right, because very often it doesn't happen. Most of the time it doesn't happen.
From our perspective, I wanted to also add something about consultants, and this is one of the key things that the informed owner, especially those who have no previous experience in hotels, the idea of judging whether this site is suitable for the hotel business, it may come from them, but they may not be able to fully address all the issues that, you know, they are part of the hotel business for 20 years. They may not be able to judge the supply-demand structure, the change of the structure in the future, and so on. So, and we look at consultants, and very often the wrong information or misinformation comes from the consultancy world, and the owner's mind becomes distorted, and we, in various instances, we start teaching them again, explaining to them that they are getting engaged in a different type of business. It's not a commodity business, it's not an office space, it's not logistics or retail. It's a different business, very much people-based, and with a lot of unknowns. And the more owners are informed about it at the beginning, the better the relationships are. And then, you know, the legal part comes in mind. And those owners are most happy to engage with a professional lawyer who has experience in hotels rather than other fields of legal profession. And this is when the relationships are strong from the very beginning with owners and operators.
I think that's certainly my experience as well. If you get a strong lawyer that's experienced in the space, it's a much smoother and more honest experience for everyone concerned. Any other questions from the floor? One of the, yeah, certainly.
Let me make one remark. You see, I'm one of these lawyers who should have advised the owner that there are other issues to respect. From my perspective, it's a bit different. You see, the management contract we talk about is a hotel management contract, and it's not a facility management contract. And the cost Mr. Hashimi is referring to is the facility management cost. And but I admit that in most cases it's not clear in the contracts who is responsible for what. The first thing which should be done, in my view, is that when putting a hotel or when the advisors, the market advisors come in the game, should say, okay, there is this F&E issue that is part of the matter, and the other one is the facility management costs, and that is the other part of the matter. And in total, that will then make the return for the investor. What is, and Mr. Hashimi is right, in most contracts it's not clearly said. It's just said, okay, we make an F&E reserve, and everybody believes that will be sufficient. By the way, it will not be sufficient, it will always exceed it. And then there is, apart from the F&E, there is this facility costs, which are a different story. That is one issue. The other remark I wanted to make, you see, Mr. Hashimi addressed the question, what does a management contract give me? You just put another sign and so on. From my experience for the last 20, 25 years, in markets where the hotel chains are not yet in existence, the management contracts makes the sense the hotel companies give them. You see, they develop a hotel. In a sectorized market like London, like Germany is, there the management contract starts to have a different role. It varies because then it is, each of the big names could manage this hotel. It's not a matter which brand is on the top of the roof. It is just another one who tries to have one more management contract being regarded as his asset. You see, we have to distinguish between a sectorized market and an emerging market. And there, in the emerging market, the management contract has the absolute right. In the sectorized market, it's a bit more difficult. Sorry, it was a.
No, I think that's very fair. That there, and one of the discussions when we were preparing for the talk, I think management agreements in emerging markets have a lot of value to add, and I think the panelists agreed with that. And it's as the market becomes more established that the challenges create. Brings me on to possibly the final question, which is the role of franchising and third-party operators with short-term management agreements that are subject to franchises, which seems to be a way in which, certainly in the UK, the market is expanding. And I just wanted to just put that to the table here. Maybe Barry, you could talk about your experience with that as a possibility of the different roles of franchises against management agreements.
I think this one, especially in the more developed, let's say, hotel industry countries, it is getting the pattern. And the strangest part is that if you then sign a management contract with one party, normally you can sign this management contract with 1 or 2 years notice. And today,
with the franchise,
no,
you mean?
even the management
Yeah.
contract, because it's a either it's a local company or either it's a slightly bigger than a local company. And the concern the management company with the brand they had, it was not the question of the time. They were actually protecting the name. They said, we don't like the name to come down and up. But funny enough, in the franchise contract that they offer, the terms can be terminated with much shorter notice. Typically, IHG contract can be terminated as a franchise with 3 years notice. Now, a management contract is, on the other hand, for 30 years. So is it not make sense for an owner to have a franchise and a management contract and say with 3 years he can get out of that scenario, and with 2 years get out of that scenario, and he can package it the way he thinks is the best suitable. So I think there is a tendency is that we are going to see more franchise, at least in the more developed hotel country, and then which address the first issue, the length of the contract.
Yep.
So in reality, this is getting resolved by another approach. So that was really emphasizing that in this country, long time contracts maybe is a history now.
Matt, what's your view on the role of franchises in the markets?
I look back at my years practicing in the U.S., where the franchise model has been alive and kicking for some time, and at least what I'm seeing is that pushing and extending throughout this region and increasing in terms of being a viable option for a hotel. I know this example is 4 or 5 star. I would still push it maybe to the upper upscale, kind of a ceiling on that as being a viable option. But certainly you're seeing growth in franchising. It's going to sit next to a management agreement as a structural option for owners and developers, for sure.
Aaron, how do you answer the question that a franchise can be terminated at relatively short notice, but the management agreement needs to have longer term?
Well, I mean, that's easy to explain from the value point of view. So, essentially, all the management contracts are franchises where the brand manages the property. So, all of them have a license agreement element to it, and there is a management agreement. So, in fact, all of them are part of the same franchising setup where instead of a third-party manager or the owner managing his own property, there is a brand that manages the property and the brand. So what we have in our agreements, or at least we tend to discuss that and openly offer this to our owners, a simplified way of either flipping to a simple franchise agreement after 3 years or 5 years when they decide to do it themselves, or they feel like hiring a third-party manager. Some owners would be interested in running their properties themselves because they feel they will be capable of doing so, and we see no problem with that. We grew up as a franchise company. I mean, the first hotel franchise is a Holiday Inn. I don't want to give the whole story because we all know this. Mm-hmm. So the flexibility of our approach is based on the fact that we manage the properties and our brands, and we deliver value through our brands to the best way that is suitable for the owner. So if a management agreement delivers value to the owner, we structure it the way that this value is maintained. So, but yes, of course, we are not interested in our name going down, and we want to see why that happens. Is that the brand that doesn't deliver on the expectation of the owner and the traveling public and on the market, or it is us who fail as managers, but the brand works? And that's something that obviously is a case-based, but I mean, we are quite flexible in discussing that.
Scott, what's your experience in that space?
Well, I've done a lot of work with a third-party manager in the region who has the largest stable of hotels in the Russian CIS market, and then they franchise various brands, Marriott, yours, and others, and you pay them a management fee, slightly less than the 3 and 10 or something like that, and then you pay the franchise fee as well. So you're paying them more money, and they deliver a better bottom line. So what does that tell me? That this company knows how to manage an Accor property better than Accor, does it? But what it is they have people that have been on the ground for a long time, and their ability with yield management, shared services, and all that is so much more nimble and street smart than a lot of certainly the brands without a large local presence, which you do. But what is it? Why can they manage a Holiday Inn and get a better bottom line than you can?
It's really just, it's a very, very judgmental call, because I mean, when we cannot compare apples to apples, if we take one that is
I'm an owner. I'm looking at that bottom line.
Yeah,
That's all I care.
of what? I mean, you cannot say this was managed by the brand, now it's managed by the third party, and it delivers a better bottom line. You look at this particular hotel, and you know, sometimes those hotels are different. They're located in a different market. They are stronger because any hotel would deliver a better bottom line. But we never tried. It was open as a franchise. So this is something that we need to look at very carefully, without judging that third-party operators deliver better bottom line. It is very much the same service. And you're right by saying that, you know, we offer them our management fees and the license fees, and it's lower than when you add the third-party manager plus the license fees. And you have, in fact, you have the third-party manager and the termination of the third-party manager, so you have two sets of relationships instead of one. You have to manage two relationships instead of one. Is that the relationship management? It also costs money to the owner.
Well, that's the problem. That the third-party manager managed the relationship with the owner a lot better. They were there all the time.
Why so?
And this, again, he told me, my secret of my success is I work for the owner. I don't work for the brand.
So we do. I mean, we don't work for the brand in this particular hotel. The brand stays on the hotel as to prove that this hotel is part of the system. But what we have to do is, no, look, under the agreement, we have to manage the business of that particular hotel. Nothing is said in the agreement that we manage the brand. We manage the hotel, and we deliver the bottom line to the owner. We paid for it.
Aaron, how can you manage a hotel with, you find me a general manager, you find me a finance director, you make me employ them, you make me employ all the employees. So the only two people coming from your operations are two people. How can you manage a hotel with two people? You can't.
What are you comparing it with? So, I mean, if we talk about third-party managers, are they doing anything different? It's exactly the same.
They've gotten experienced people who've worked in these systems of global hotels and are focusing on working for the owner.
It is exactly the same setting. It's exactly. They also run. I mean, we're just discussing the fact that the third-party manager runs a property as the agent of the owner, the same way as the brand. But it's not part of the brand, and it can be fired within a much shorter period of time because of the length of the contract. But the setting of a third-party manager is actually the same. The employees of the hotel, yeah, well, it's a question of term, and we come back to the beginning of the story. If this contract delivers value, why would you be concerned about the length of it? It's 20 years, 25 years, 40 years, whatever. You have the value throughout the life of a contract, you're happy with it. So what is detrimental for the value? So it is a bad contract, but I mean, the bad contract would be with the third-party manager. So it's not it is a case-by-case scenario.
He said it was an agency contract, so we can terminate it real then. So.
Another topic.
Time is against us.
Topic.
Another topic. Thank you, everyone. Perhaps you could thank the panelists for their time, but thank you very much for listening.